Friends, welcome to our Living Harmonics, Living Cosmos, which is part of our exploration of the lost fantasy of the Greeks. In this video, we have a little surprise because we'll begin with these statements. Morphic resonant fields are habits. Rupert Sheldrake. Memory is not stored in the brain. Henri Bergson. What drives the formation of a frog head in electrical fields? Levin. Hidden variables, quantum information, wholeness, the Holomovement and the Implicate Order. Bohm. The brain is a filter and is nothing like computation. Moving paths of observation, information pickup, resonant ambient optics. The eye is not a camera. To see is to form. Sight is the ancient harmonics and energy of life forming imagination. It appeared to us that the perpetual repetitio forma of embodiment-in-habitude is governed by invisible living habits of form and formation over time, and that these may be harmonic principles, higher dimensional resonant forms. Invisible resonances of light matter formation or harmonic matter forms, living, fast pulsating form resonances interforming, unfolding, and enfolding, precede all things embodied, corporeal and manifest, and governs the flowing, coming to be in habitude of whole corporeal natures. All forms formed by nature possess precedent and governing principled patterns of formation. This is not a huge leap, thanks to the pioneering scientists that we mentioned above. But it is a leap to see quantum fields and forces as forming, living, possessing life, imagination, and formation in the context of the modern machine mind and postmodern truth, and to see that these ideas come to us from beyond great antiquity. May we say, in a time long forgotten, the unknown was made intelligible through the internal information of divine imagination, intuition, which is a unity. And that divine intelligence manifests is the formation in act of energy, motion, and vitality, potentia manifest, of sacred imagination, and who brings forth at once that which is latent. Our own interforming divine intuition, the interrelation of our fantasy in potentia with the sacred within us, is the doorway to a deeper understanding of our own lives, of all life, and of the sacred within. But how can this be possible, especially seen in the context of our present world, where we are prisoners of our own making, clothed in the garments of our own projections, the majestic machine, the digital switch, coding of neural networks, our strictly linear evolution, and the manipulation of big science, where the centers are viciously removed from the scene. In the next few video presentations, we investigate the most high divine illuminated summit of the forming motions of the whole world, or the all of Balboa. This video introduces the lost theology of divine imagination of early Platonism and Christianity, together with a brief look at the Aeon or Ion of Jung and Henri Bergson. Ideas, say the ancients, are everywhere internally produced from unapparent and invisible living principles. The true and highest ideas of forms are theological and mystical. To bring forth through contemplation intellectual intuitions from within this most high divine nature requires inner processes of labor and interformation. On many interior levels, immense internal labor, activity, motion, energy and potentia are involved in the formation of psychical processes, of spiritual evolution, of emanation and its enfoldment, both on individual and cosmic scales. Indeed, we may say that the whole infinite forming trajectory of the fullest experience of our lives are all life are participations within this unending process of becoming to be. And of our own participations, bringing forth from our endeavors new images of divinity and the experience of the beautiful in our lives, new psychological circles of world experience. Less known, however, of these early times is that many different streams of psychologies draw from the early work of Plotinus Proclus, which is the hallmark of a great psychology. As you may perceive, many of these theologies would be interwoven with each other on account of the pre-Grecian fountain from where they are all drawn. There is our lineage of Proclus, the pre-Asclepian Hermes and the lineage of Zoroaster, Hermes, Homer, Orpheus, Pythagoras, Plato, and through a long line of investigations through Platon, Gemistus Platon and Fusino, Thomas Taylor, Balboa, and Grimes in modern times drew their understanding. There is also the outstanding Iranologist Henri Bergson, who in his Spiritual Body and Celestial Earth discusses the theology of a long line of Arabic mystics on the subject of active imagination and theophany, or world manifestation, many of whom in some way or another draw from Proclus and Plato. There is Rumi, some Arabic philosophers, Rumi, Alhazen, Averroes, Avicenna, Zoravardi, Al-Arabi, and Al-Kindi. We'll hear more of these after these unfoldments of Proclus, and we still have to treat of his fantasy properly and that of Plotinus. That's to come, but after these important unfoldments. There is the Gnostic hierarchy of Dionysius, St. Erigena, and the scholastic theologist St. Aquinas, and the modern Neoplatonists, Jonathan Pergot, which is interwoven with the lineage of the Gnostic Jung and the Iranology of Bergson and Shiite philosophers today. There is the lineage of Indo-Persian theology, which we will meet later in this video, and that there exist alchemical theological commentaries of the Parmenides of Plato, his Republic and the Timaeus, and that these are principally contained in the intellectual commentaries of Proclus, is not well known as far as I can tell. Who is the fountain from which and through which mystics of ancient drew their intuition of ideas? In the beginning we said, ideas are everywhere internally produced from unapparent and invisible living principles. And we said that the true and highest beings are theological and mystical. And we said that divinity exhibits, projects the first beings. It is to these elevated theological conceptions of ancient sages that we look to as a guide to the mystical summit of living being and its understanding in early Greco-Roman Platonism. A psychological living unity of being in its most sacred of senses is divinely established within all beings and the whole world. Indeed, living being is the center around whom all things revolve and evolve themselves. In this image of the beautiful photography of smoke vortices from a burning incense stick, a very beautiful picture that we can clearly see the vortices forming, that they are connected, and that there are, like, shall we say, vivid lines and subtle formations everywhere, and that each of these are forming around a center of mass, and they're all connected. There's nothing that's not connected here, or around a center of mass, along with a host of opposing forces, movement, tension, resistances, temperature, and air currents. Indeed, a potentia of forces and formation and its movement that is brought forth into embodiment within the whole comprehension of the world soul. Let's just not skim over the last statement. A potentia of forces and formation and its movement that is brought forth into embodiment within the whole comprehension of the world soul. Through this analogy of a center of mass of the revolution of all waves, we may see that living being is formed a divine unity abiding, binding and connecting all psychological processions that evolve their internal formation from within this internal summit of being or idea. Living being, a wholeness, is replete with spiritual illumination, spiritual intelligence, and sight. And soul is the animating, living, harmonic medium and light body of the whole world and its formation, within which and through which the procession or generation of all things participate. This formative genesis of our world and its material progression and participation within the world soul is observed over time within the flowing interconnected waters, the ebb and flow of life, movement of form, the cycles of rebirth and death, of day and night, witnessed by ancient mystics, whose formation or generation, say they, is interconnected with the most sacred of lights of the world and its eternal subsistence. This psychical wave movement, a movement formed through both the opposition of masculine and feminine principles, is always flowing, forming towards psychological perfection, and owes its psychological movement to separation and difference, opposites are very important. Contraries are the same and different. We've seen McGilchrist say the same, similar things. These mystical ideas of Proclus and more ancient sages were brought into the formulations of Christianity in its very early centuries through the melting pot of ancient Rome. Dionysius, the Areopagite, 500 AD, mentioned by St. Paul in Acts 17, takes from or transfers in his Celestia Hierarchia some aspects of the work of the last great intellectual edifice of the latter Platonic Proclus. In his work, the Areopagite places the summit or apex of his celestial hierarchy in the Gnostic pleroma. What does this mean? We will see in the next few slides. With its highest intelligence and divinity placed within heaven and the celestial expanse. The works of Dionysius, later translated into Latin by Saint Erigena and Robert of Lincoln, Grosseteste, and studied by Saint Aquinas, as well as is well accepted theology in Christianity today. But here is the circumstance to contemplate. With this placement of the summit of deity, godlike light beings within the pleroma seated within heaven and the celestial sphere, the Areopagite, some say, seem to retranslate the luminous summit of the works of Proclus. But Thomas Taylor, the 19th century later Platonic philosopher, indicate that the Areopagite confounds the luminous summit of the works of Proclus, whom he borrows from. Elsewhere, some others say he lifts or plagiarizes whole sections directly from the work of Proclus. There are many other controversies that exist, as is not unusual of a great work. Indeed, both Plotinus in select works of Plotinus, of Taylor, and Proclus in his 5th chapter of Book 4 of his 6 books on the theology of Plato addresses this very matter some years before Dionysius. They observed that there were people even before their time, such as Valentinus of 108 AD, who do not understand the mystical summit of Plato. Hence Proclus asks, with reference to the 12 kings or leaders, the zodiac, which we also find in Corbin and the work of Jung, in Corbin's wonderful work on Shiite mystics and the philosophers of Iran. Hey. Says Proclus, what is the heaven to which Jupiter leads the gods? Now, friends, there are some Gnostics that holds the demiurgus to be evil. This is not the Gnosticism that we talk about here. What therefore is the heaven to which Jupiter leads the gods? He says, if we should say that is the sensible heaven, as a certain other person say it is, it will be necessary that the more excellent divine genera, the light-like deities, should be converted to things naturally subordinate to themselves. If Jupiter or Zeus, the mighty leader of the immaterial heaven, proceeds to the sensible heaven and leads to it all the gods that follow him, he will have a conversion to things subordinate and to things posterior to himself. Together with Jupiter, this will also be the case with all the other leaders and the gods and angels suspended from these deific summits. Here with heaven, Proclus clearly indicates the essence of a self-luminous, immaterial, light-like, illuminated summit. Our mythological king, Heaven, one of three leaders, is within itself a light-like deity, indeed invisible and beyond the sensible heaven, and comprehending within itself the living, vital, psychical power and like resonant intelligence of fantasia or divine imagination of Homer, Orpheus, the Greeks, and the formation of multitudes of worlds. In his mystical commentary on the Parmenides, Proclus treats of the vast interconnectedness of the total power, vitality, and motion of divinity, imagination, and wholeness, and the internal forming alchemical processes and evolutions of the world. Divinity and immaterial illuminated wholeness comprehends and brings forth from within itself the formation of the all, the one sensible body of the world. The wholeness of heaven and the psychical expanse and the all-pervasiveness of spirit within and through the whole of things. In his comprehensive works, Proclus therefore discusses, amongst others, the threefold subsistence, a unity of body, soul, and spirit, with its superessential luminous summit. The good, the fountain of illumination, whose love from on high interconnects, binds, and comprehends the formation of the corporeal world, and all its habits and their formations. For psychomaterial habitude, indicate Proclus, come into being in the mundane world through the intelligent and infinite power of the mundane fantasy or whirlpool. Whoops, where is that thing? From the perspective of ancient theology and alchemy, living walls, whirlpools, vortices, torsion, tension, pressure, and the tension of opposites, breath, spirit, intelligence, the cloud, or the glory of God, brings forth through their harmonics the formation of the whole world. The cloud and the glory of God everywhere present is well known to Christianity and Judaism, but was also known to Homer in 800 BC, for he speaks in many places in his Iliad of divine imagination, of living vortices, of cloud-compelling Jove, of the feminine multiplication and formation. But there is more. The alchemical forming divine fantasy of Proclus and more ancient Greek sages with its profoundly united luminous hyparxis, summit, has been rejected by the new Gnostic Carl Jung in his psychology of the unconscious, which he dismisses as the primitive fantasy of the Greeks, from which, says he, we evolved so much since. Friends, it is my impression that things that don't fit into our worldview are summarily dismissed without thought. Materialists who oppose the divine, the sacred, the truth in our world and within our sciences also rejects this mystical alchemy of world formation. The inner alchemy, a dismissal that can be traced through a long history and in many forms. And yet the divine imagination intuition of mystics, poets, musicians, prophets, and of ordinary people in many cultures, though the least understood, is nonetheless standing as the fountain of inspiration through which the ancient sages and modern musicians formed their mystical, philosophical, and cosmological conceptions, and which supersedes all rationality, logic, and reasoning. This intuitive inner unfoldment was the purpose of the practice of the Eleusinian mysteries and the elevation of the human soul to the good. The initiations within the Eleusinian mysteries, into which no doubt a whole string of notable theologists of antiquity were taught by Egyptians, had for its end the mystical unfoldment of inner intellectual intuition that we just mentioned. Indeed, Henry Oldfather, who translates the work of Diodorus Siculus, the first century BC, indicate, for instance, that the mystery of Ulysses have had a much longer prehistory in oral traditions than is believed today, beyond even the great flood mentioned by Plato in the Critias. A cursory reading or a random study, comparatively, and interpretation of these works would not be a preparation for the mystical work of the soul, touching through inner contact the contemplator. Presence and attention over time is requisite. A mystical inner ascent, to the summit of which indeed the inquirer is guided internally in his or her study, having established herself within an inner port. Who are the initiators of the mysteries of Ulysses? These initiators into the mysteries of Ulysses are timeless internal ideas or being themselves. From everything we have said now up to this point, we may gather that the world of the latter Platonists embraces an all-living, luminous, resonant through world. Indeed, a tightly knit, instantaneous interweaving of all life forming, manifest both within its material and immaterial flow and splendor, eternally, a living, interforming knowledge within the sacred, the divine and human experience. These lives and their experience are ours too. To me, ancient harmonics are living, intelligent field resonances, irreducible unities, wholenesses and qualities of light and the whole self-moving and self-subsisting soul of the universe. A cosmos indeed filled through the psychomaterial formation and the self-subsistence of living, intelligent and all-perceiving beings. This is the animated, living world embraced by ancients way before the advent of mechanics. Beings, ideas, indeed invisible to us, proceeding, going forth from their source of being through the whole of world formation, without whom the at once unity of our looking itself would not be. Nor would, as it seems to me, the unity of our being, wholeness as a human being, as humans, and our experience possess any existence whatever without this interior, through tether, anchored within all being and life, and our eternal interforming relation of spirit, soul, and body with the divine within. The intuitive conceptions, therefore, in the mystical intuition and works of the ancients, unfolds to us living, invisible intelligences and powers whose energy and capacity pervades the psychical formation of the whole body of the universe. Indeed, one may say the flowing music, which we are, is composed within the all-comprehending breath, spirit of the One or God. Intelligence and music forming, vaster than ourselves and the planets and the stars and galaxies, beyond description, comprehends all life, all power, and all living beings and all of the cosmos. One sensible anthropos, an image of intelligible essence. Ideas, beings, divine intelligence are the elevating and forming divinities interior to the unfolding and enfolding of the whole cosmos and of all its participations. Hence, the mystery of living being and life, with vast reaches of forming imagination and spiritual sight and the depths unfathomable, without a doubt inspired all mystics and inquirers. Indeed, the self-luminous whole of wholes of our two leaders of the latter Platonists is a mystical intuition through the heart of the divine. But as it appeared to me, this eternal fountain, the leader of which is the firstborn ether, masculine, phanetos, of Orpheus, phanes, the intelligible intellect who leaps into light, a very different interpretation from what we are used to, possesses similarities in the theologies we have already mentioned, here drawn together with the following views. The luminous summit of eternity appear to be similar to Iswara, the efficient cause, the spiritual root of creative world formation of Indian philosophy, in which Maya, divine imagination, the cosmic material cause, is indistinct from mystical Iswara. For this self-luminous deity comprehends Maya within its divine energy, says Sankara. And within the light of lights of the Arabic works on active imagination of Corbin, on the Shiite and Sufi sages of ancient Persia and Zend-Avesta, is situated the Arabic Adam Kadmon of the Lurianic Kabbalah. These theologies appear indeed to possess spiritual similarities and at the same time differences with the wholenesses of mystics under discussion, which we have paid the scantest of attention to. For through all these similarities we may indeed perceive a confluence of a vast interwoven and world formation from different perspectives. More specifically, the eternity of all living aeons of the latter Platonists, particularly of Proclus and Plotinus, is placed by Proclus in a more ancient people near the one in immaterial heaven. Here the one is exempt from time, space, all language and definition, yet is omnipresent and at once immanent. On the other hand, the aeon or ion of Jung and Corbin and of the Arabic works, the Shiites of ancient Persia and the Zend-Avesta, is placed within the sensible heaven. For they hold three orders or worlds, which very briefly are: the pre-intellectual world, Alam Akli. I am not taking no responsibility for my pronunciation, even though I had help from a very important person. The pre-intellectual world denoted in their theosophy is Jabarut, or the world of pure Charybdic intelligences. Charybdic means about soul. The imaginal world, Halam Mitali, the mundus imaginalis, well known of Jung, the mediate world, known also in the theosophy as malakut, the world of the soul and of souls. The sensible world, alam hissi, which is the domain, the mulk of material beings. Hence, the mundus imaginalis is the mediate world of our qualia. I'm not sure about this word, it's very strange Arabic word, is the world of malakut, the world of soul, and is the celestial earth and the celestial corporeity, according to Corbin. In this Arabic alchemical treatise, the Aurora Consurgens, we found this winged symbol of Hermes, or Mercury, standing with his feet on Mother Earth and the head in heaven, a deep vision of the depth of the world, of angels and world formation. This work is a commentary on the Latin translation of Silvery Water by Muhammad, the son of Umayhil al-Tamimi, on 900 AD. In this alchemical significance of birds and wings, which we have denoted here too, is stressed by Corbin himself when he quotes Plato's Phaedrus with reference to birds, wings and souls of the Arabic philosopher Avicenna as follows. Like the symbol of the celestial ascent, which we may, by analogy, only say is the Jerusalem Olympus of the earlier pre-Greek philosophy. The symbol of the bird recurs so often in a succession of mystical experiences that we must here confine ourselves to a few essential cases. Plato offers us one of the most fully developed exemplifications of it, says he, by showing us the soul occupied in governing its two redoubtable companions, opposites, and balancing them the one against the other. The recital of Hay ibn Yaqzan has already reminded us of the myth in the Phaedrus, the chariot of the soul drawn by its yoked but unlike horses, opposites. However, says Corbin, the myth in the Phaedrus imagines the soul in the likeness of an energy whose nature is that of a pair of winged steeds driven from a chariot by a charioteer who is also winged. The Avicennan symbolism of the bird, of which there are very wonderful recitations, concentrates on the charioteer. It's impossible to improve upon Plato's own formulation of the reasons for this ever-recurrent vision of wings and angels, in which the soul perceives itself as a winged being, because the winged is the most divine among corporeal things, and also alludes to the alchemical intuition, the alchemical inner formation of the world. The wing is intended to soar aloft and to carry that which gravitates downward back to an upper region. These three world perspectives. Oops. What am I doing here? These three world perspectives, of course there are more. If you care to look at these, are in our video 3, headed by Corbin, Thomas Taylor and Proclus and Sankara. There are more excellent, there are other more excellent Indian philosophers too. Aurobindo comes to mind immediately. Possess divine imagination and emanation or internal projection as a sacred spiritual summit and a fountain of and the divine glory of the theophany, which is world formation, the alchemy of world formation. Oops. At a glance, we may perceive then what is common to these theologies: the glory of God, or living, flowing cosmic music of Pythagoras, the alchemical formation of the all of spirit, soul, and body. But we think that man and nature cannot be properly understood through a focus on extraction or analysis of parts from wholeness, or living being, for parts have no subsistence without the comprehension of irreducible wholeness. But if we are oblivious of the whole, with a focus on quantity alone, posterior abstraction, analysis, and logic is all we have. The whole and its form, therefore, precedes and comprehends all formation, and is the abiding, everywhere touching unity that resolves into the comprehension and unity of itself, the activity, energy, and motion of difference and opposites. In a remarkable degree, we think, do these major theologies converse on a more ancient time and agree upon internal mystical contact and interformation between humans, angelic worlds, and a transfer of knowledge through internal intellectual imagination, intuition. Moreover, that divine worlds of the ancients are unseen beings, invisible, interior to us, and forming of the whole of the sensibility of the world, as far as I can perceive, common to all these perspectives, but apparently alien to our sciences. Here, with reference to the unseen, we have no sensible conception of time, space, or of anything corporeal whatever. Yet, without this everywhere invisible hand of intelligence, interformation, the sensible world possesses no existence whatever. This interformation and internal psycho-spiritual contact within our own imagination and intuition and our own spiritual elevation has been lost. The wonderful Professor McGilchrist calls this beautifully an encounter with the sacred within. The mystical worlds of the ancients, as we have seen, possess luminous, light-like ideas or beings, who outforms, exhibits, brings forth, forming within themselves the whole body of the world and the material sensibility. That the wholeness of the body and the sensibility of the cosmos is an enfolding and unfolding image of intelligence, of immaterial and unseen ideas or beings, is the summit of the mystical work of Proclus and more ancient theologies. Here, as it appeared to be, there is no life that can exist, that can come into being outside the life, the light, and the wholeness of intelligence of spirit, soul, and body. May we say, eternal life and its power to be and to become, the power of life to move and to be moved, and to be in flowing motion, and for us to become de novo participations within its infinite flowing music or harmonics, is something to ponder in every new life born. For the illuminated summit of divinity, the first abiding motion, rest, do not possess parts but comprehend these within eternity itself. For as it appears to us, living life is the forming, resonant flow, the motion of being in motion in all worlds. That is, abiding life and being is implicit within forming movement, and nothing is exempt from its omnipresence. Our endeavor to understand life from the little parts and aspects of matter we can dissect, put together in different constellations, appear veritably to be upside down. In ancient theologies, understanding was not acquired through the perspective of a strictly external or posterior analysis, or through crashing what we think of today as dead material things by themselves. But understanding was gained through internal psychical contact and interformation, intuition of the imagination or fantasy of both internal preceding form and external form, which is a unity regarded as sacred. For if this living self, the root of all being, supersedes all and is an irreducible unity, who will be able to reverse engineer and reconstellate this unity through attempting to tear it apart? Within this mystical unity and the wholeness of spirit, soul and body, life, power and motion is the first unity. Hence, parts are themselves unities who comes into being through the beauty of loving bonds and participating within wholeness, and coming to being upon the basis of preceding intelligence and life forming, comprehending itself, which formation is internal and from within wholeness itself. Says the mystics of ancient, life is self-subsistent, self-moving, and produces all forming movements within itself. This appears to be the nature of our own formation, for the first abiding living being, living self, is reflected through likeness in all the moving, flowing powers of all lives, of living motion and of cosmic formation. But if we lost the notions of being and the sacred of divinity within all humans and all of the living lives around us, and if we forgot about our mystical communion through sacred religious liturgy, rituals and prayers, if this is the case, to what condition shall we ascribe the chimeric chaos that we see today, but to our own oblivious endeavors, to wit, governments lying to their constituents, endless wars and the wealth and leverage it brings to warrior kings, the technogarchs, the kings of the new world of post-truth and artificial science, of big science, big manipulation, big leverage, and big control, who are not ashamed to say they can do things better than even Mother Nature, attests to this oblivion. Add to this the reproductive mutilation of little babies and prepubescent kids and their bodies to transform their identity into whatever they feel like. The killing of a blossoming life, of the obliteration of living differences in all humans, an impossible endeavor with dire consequences. A doctrine-laced GMO gummy bears, beautiful little things you can eat, peddled to undiscerning babies who are adults themselves. How is this pertaining to our lives, and why is our whole video of a living being and living cosmos important? Friends, we don't know is the answer to all these things. We don't know. We hardly can say that we understand the idea of our own life and of ourselves. Yet, the said institutes and their scientists perform like superstars. Our lives possessed within our creation and formation as a unity, participating within wholeness itself, but one signature. Human imagination and intuition, therefore, is not nothing, a figment or a thing of our external sense perception, and a thing of firing neurons, as some would think today. Indeed, divine life and imagination itself is all world forming, implicit within its music or harmony. For this kind of intuitive inner work, our psyche is the principal relation within the sacred and the discovery and unfoldment of elder wisdom, yet to be brought forth in every new life in the world fantasy. For we are participating within the flowing rhythms of life, always turning, flowing. This elevating relation of love through psychological contact or encounter is of the nature of both subtle, internal and external form, is inward looking, is silent, is praying, investigating, searching, probing, learning, and draws us up toward the good and the beautiful and the loving. This is a life choice. It seems self-evident that divine intuition, which is brought forth or called forth internally within the psyche, requires the precedence of wholeness, intelligence, which surpasses our sense perspective of ourselves. Living intelligences, living light beings. Earlier we said living forms, beings, come to be in habitude within the mundane world. In a similar way to these waves, which come into being from the depths of the ocean of the world soul, the living forces of nature, this ancient theology of habitude, of harmonic form precedes and governs the reflected movement of being and likeness everywhere, similar to these waves, which is a form of moving, living light. And we indicated that resonant form and corporeal habitude is within itself interforming internally with preceding wholeness and being through unseen and invisible bonds of love, so that we may conclude that all forming forms are resonances of habitudes, who follows a through continuum, internally formed. For vortices and fast-moving whirlpools, living tension torsion fields, pressure fields, also below the Planck scale, are of masculine and feminine nature. The masculine bounding, pressuring, contracting, and tension, and the feminine expanding, multiplying, releasing, dispersing, tension and pressure, a fast flux, enfolding and unfolding, and are possessing subtle living resonant psychic matter fields, forming who governs the development of the whole unity of the being of organisms and all living things in the cosmos. From thence Proclus says, multitudes, infinite abundances of beings, forms of self, perpetually manifesting within the mundane world, cannot be inhabited randomly. This was in 450 AD already. For this following ancient thesis permeates the alchemy of formation and unfoldment of the ancients. All progressions of corporeal beings are necessarily governed by preceding living wholenesses and principles who are leading causes, invisible natures, soul and intelligent spirit, beings, subtle forms, who are constants governing. Does it not now seem to you that our ancient mystics may have prefigured these following statements? Morphic resonant fields are habits. Rupert Sheldrake. Memory is not stored in the brain. Henri Bergson. What drives the formation of a froghead in electrical fields? Michael Levin. Hidden variables, interconnectedness, quantum potential, wholeness and holomovement, and the implicate order. The brain is a filter and is nothing like computation. Moving paths of observation, not points of observation, information pickup, and resonant ambient optics. The eye is not a camera. The all shape, a structure that encapsulates, comprehends all of the principles that were sacred to the Pythagoreans. Terence Howard. Friends, the perpetual, infinite repetition of embodiment in habitude is governed by and preceded and enfolded within a greater wholeness, and invisible living beings, form fields, principles, higher dimensional resonant forms. Hence, invisible, subtle light matter, vehicles, constant resonant matter forms, living pulsating resonances interforming, preceding all things corporeal and manifest, and governing the alchemical coming to be in habitude of whole corporeal natures. Our interforming intuition and our fantasy in potentia, our fantasy, imagination in potentia, our highest internal relation with the sacred within. Thank you for watching. We appreciate that. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on X. Links below.